Imagine a world where a single organization controls a web of ruthless violence, stretching across borders, continents, and cities. Welcome to the criminal underworld, where chaos reigns and gangs like S13 redefine what it means to be feared. But here's the chilling truth: S13 doesn't just kill for the sake of it. They make violence an art, savoring the agony that comes before the end. And it's not just them. From the gritty streets of Chicago to the quiet corners of Italy, gangs are everywhere, feeding off fear and control, recruiting young souls to commit acts so brutal, they'll leave you speechless. If someone dares to cross you, forget mercy, they'll make sure there's no coming back. Ready for a ride through the darkest corners of the world? Let's dive into the 15 most dangerous gangs on the planet, starting with the savage Badlands of Mexico. You won't want to miss this. Picture this. It's the 1960s and America's prison system is about to change forever. As the country moves toward desegregation, the walls of the nation's most notorious prisons start to feel the tension. Inmates, once divided by race, begin to form their own alliances, and from this chaotic shift, the Aryan Brotherhood is born. Legend has it that this ruthless gang took root in San Quentin State Prison, quickly spreading its venom throughout the California prison system. But what started as a group of angry men trying to survive quickly became a powerhouse of criminality. By 1975, the Aryan Brotherhood was no longer just a prison gang. It had evolved into an organized crime syndicate, sparking bloody race wars against rivals like the Nuestra Familia and the Black Guerrilla family. To stop the violence, the authorities segregated the gangs into different prisons, and that's where the Aryan Brotherhood began to truly thrive, in Chino Prison. This is where they fine-tuned their ruthless operations and built a network that went far beyond prison bars. Fast forward to the 1990s, and the Aryan Brotherhood was no longer fighting petty race wars. They were deep into drug trafficking, prostitution, and executing high-profile murders with deadly precision. Their power grew so fast and so fierce that some even claimed they had more control than the American mafia. And here's the kicker. Once they dominated the prison system, they went global, recruiting thousands on the outside. Today, the Aryan Brotherhood boasts anywhere from 15,000 to 20,000 members, making them one of the most feared criminal groups in the U.S. Crazy, right? But their story isn't over yet. Stick with us to find out just how far their influence really stretches. In the depths of the criminal underworld, one name strikes fear more than most: MS-13 or Mara Salvatrucha. Born in the heart of Los Angeles in the 1980s, this gang began as a simple group of immigrants seeking protection, but it didn't take long for them to turn into one of the most feared criminal empires in the world. Fast forward to today, and MS-13's grip extends far beyond the U.S. They've become a transnational criminal force with operations stretching across the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, areas so violent, they're now considered the most dangerous places on Earth that aren't at war. The gang's tentacles reach into drug trafficking, arms dealing, human trafficking, and extortion, making them a true global menace. But here's the twist. The origins of MS-13 weren't built on bloodshed. They started as a group of refugees trying to protect their own in a foreign land. They were the guardians, not the destroyers. But as time went on, their mission twisted, and they became the very monsters they once fought against. From street corners in LA to the brutal prisons of Central America, their influence is everywhere, cementing their reputation as a gang that thrives on violence and intimidation. The MS-13 is locked in a deadly feud with the 18th Street Gang, a rivalry that has claimed countless lives, leaving innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. It's a war that has no end in sight. Now, here's a chilling question. How did a group once formed for protection transform into one of the deadliest forces in modern history? Stick around, because the story of MS-13 is far from finished. And trust me, it's more twisted than you can imagine. Deep in the heart of Japan, there's a criminal empire like no other, one that blends ancient tradition with ruthless modern crime. Meet the Yakuza, a mafia-like organization with roots so deep in Japanese culture that they've become an almost mythical force. Known for their intricate tattoos and samurai-inspired rituals, the Yakuza doesn't just rule the streets, they control nearly every corner of Japan's criminal world, from blackmailing and smuggling to drug trafficking and gambling. But here's the twist. Their influence stretches far beyond the shadows of Tokyo. They've infiltrated legal businesses too, owning restaurants, talent agencies, trucking companies, and even major factories. It's a perfect mix of crime and commerce. The Yakuza's power is so extensive that it's almost impossible to imagine a corner of Japan where they don't have a hand in something. Now, you might be wondering, where did this mafia-like organization come from? Well, it's not just a product of modern crime. The Yakuza's origins can be traced back centuries, possibly to Ronin, masterless samurai who became bandits in the early 17th century, or to the noble warriors who defended the people against them. Fast forward to the 1960s, and the Yakuza were a massive force with over 180,000 members. Today, their numbers have dwindled, but they're still a dominant force with tens of thousands of associates spread across the globe. Here's the kicker. Despite their illegal activities, the Yakuza have a bizarre reputation for performing charitable acts. In 1995, they donated supplies to victims of the Kobe earthquake, and in 2011, they were among the first to provide aid after the Japan tsunami. But don't let that fool you. These guys are still ruthless. Over time, they've shifted from violent street gangs to corporate masterminds, quietly running criminal enterprises with a slick, business-like efficiency. Even with the government cracking down, the Yakuza's roots run too deep to be uprooted. They've become a necessary evil, thriving alongside society like a silent virus. The Yakuza may not be the bloodiest gang out there, but make no mistake, they're just as deadly. Stick around, because this story has more layers than you can imagine. Imagine a cartel so brutal, so merciless, that even the Mexican government has dubbed it the most dangerous criminal organization in the country. Enter the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG, a force of terror that's rewriting the rules of organized crime. Founded in 2009 by the elusive Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, A.L. Mencho, CJNG has quickly risen through the ranks to become one of the most feared and deadly cartels in the world. With a military-style structure, CJNG is known for its ruthless tactics and unmatched violence. They don't just deal in drugs. They dominate entire regions, employing specially trained hitmen and even running a hitman school to mold the next generation of killers. Sounds like something out of a nightmare, right? But it gets worse. Reports suggest that CJNG's brutality goes beyond violence, way beyond. There are chilling rumors that this cartel has engaged in cannibalism, feeding on the flesh of their victims as part of their initiation rituals. This isn't just a gang. It's a terrifying, almost ritualistic force that thrives on fear and power. And they don't just stay in Mexico. CJNG's reach is expanding across borders, from Central America to the US, Australia, and even Europe. They've been known to use drones to carry out attacks, adding a modern twist to their savage operations. With their hands in the drug trade, arms dealing, and so much more, they're not just a cartel, they're an empire of violence. Are you ready to dive deeper into the darkness? Because CJNG isn't done yet, and their story is far from over. Stick around because this rabbit hole goes even deeper. Picture this. A criminal empire that's been around for centuries, hidden deep within the shadows of Italy's criminal underworld. The 'Ndrangheta Mafia isn't just another name in the mafia world. It's one of Italy's oldest and most formidable criminal organizations, with roots stretching back to the 18th century. Born from the heat of the persecution of the Sicilian Mafia, Cosa Nostra, the 'Ndrangheta has thrived, not just surviving the test of time but expanding into a wide array of criminal ventures. From money laundering to human trafficking, extortion, and even rigging public contracts, this group is deeply embedded in Italy's economy and beyond. Their reach is so extensive that even high-profile figures, like former Italian lawmaker Gianluca Patelli, have been caught in their web. In 2023, Patelli was sentenced to 11 years for acting as a fixer for the organization. Talk about an unexpected connection. And according to Interpol's Secretary General Jürgen Stock, the 'Ndrangheta is not just a problem for Italy, it's one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. So much so that in 2021, Interpol set up a dedicated task force to target their operations. But what's truly chilling? The sheer scale of their wealth. Back in 2008, Italy's Eurispes estimated the 'Ndrangheta's turnover at a staggering €44 billion, a figure that accounted for about 3% of Italy's entire GDP. That's not pocket change. And despite being a criminal syndicate, the 'Ndrangheta knows how to play both sides. They reinvest their blood money into local businesses, sure, but with one major twist. It's all done to increase their grip on power and expand their influence. The gang doesn't stop in Italy. Their empire extends across the globe, spanning the US, Canada, Latin America, and even Australia, boasting about 10,000 members and over 60,000 affiliates worldwide. With this reach and their criminal expertise, it's no wonder that 'Ndrangheta has earned its place as the deadliest criminal force in Italy. This is a gang that isn't just about violence, it's a well-oiled, global criminal machine that blends intimidation with cunning business strategy. Stick around, because we've only scratched the surface of their sinister empire. Picture this: Chicago, 1960s. A group of young immigrants, Mexican and Puerto Rican, coming together to fight against the racial prejudice and violence they faced daily. What began as a movement for protection and unity quickly transformed into something much darker. Enter the Latin Kings, a street gang that's grown into one of the most formidable criminal organizations in the US. Fast forward to today, and the Latin Kings are no longer just a gang, they are a massive network of over 20,000 members, with a presence in 31 states and 150 cities. The group is split into two powerful factions: the Motherland faction, based in Chicago, and the Bloodline faction, which calls New York home. These factions operate like separate entities, but both share a common goal: dominance through violence, intimidation, and a tight grip on the streets. The Latin Kings aren't just running the streets, they're running a full-scale criminal operation. Drug distribution, robberies, money laundering, and fraud are their bread and butter. And don't forget their alliances with other dangerous gangs, including the Bloods, the Sinaloa cartel, and the Vice Lords. But with alliances come enemies, and the Latin Kings frequently clash with rival groups like the Crips, the Gangster Disciples, and even Los Zetas. These violent turf wars leave a trail of bloodshed, with no one willing to back down. Today, the Latin Kings are one of the most violent street gangs in America, leaving a wake of murder, shootings, and destruction wherever they go. The streets of Chicago are flooded with arms, and the battle for dominance continues, as the Latin Kings fight to spread their message through fear and force. It's a tale of power, violence, and survival. Stick around, because this story is far from over, and the bloodshed is only escalating. Imagine this: a group of Mexico's elite soldiers, trained to fight at the highest levels, suddenly swapping their military uniforms for the blood-soaked rags of a criminal empire. That's the terrifying birth of Los Zetas. Back in 1997, 31 members of Mexico's elite airborne special forces turned rogue, leaving their country's army behind to become hired killers, bodyguards, and drug runners for the Gulf Cartel. Their skills? Unmatched. Their brutality? Unforgettable. But it didn't stop there. Led by the ruthless Z1, Arturo Guzman de Quena, the Zetas quickly carved their name into the darkest corners of the underworld. However, it wasn't long before the military took down de Quena in a bloody clash in 2002, but the legend of Los Zetas lived on. Enter Heriberto Lazcano, or Z3, a mastermind who took the Zetas from cartel foot soldiers to a power in their own right. Under his rule, they broke free from the Gulf Cartel and became an empire all their own. Today, Los Zetas aren't just a Mexican cartel, they're a global menace, with tentacles reaching from Central America to Colombia, even making connections in Europe, the US, and West Africa. Their operations? Drugs, arms, human trafficking, you name it. But it's not just about making money, it's about making a statement. Los Zetas use their military precision to control territories with brutal force, and they're not afraid to leave a trail of carnage behind them. Just look at the 72 migrants they massacred in 2010. And let's not forget, they don't play by anyone's rules. This is a cartel that runs on fear, control, and power. Think you've seen the worst? Wait till you hear what comes next, because Los Zetas aren't done yet. Stick around, and I'll show you how deep their reach really goes. Deep in the heart of Chicago's underground, there's a name that strikes fear: Vice Lords Nation. Born in 1957 within the confines of the St. Charles Juvenile Correctional Facility, a group of African-American youths from the North Lawndale neighborhood came together, led by the charismatic Edwin "Pep" Perry. What started behind bars quickly spilled into the streets, as the Vice Lords rose to power with a violent vengeance. By 1964, just 7 years after their formation, the Vice Lords had become a massive problem for law enforcement. Armed robberies, car thefts, assaults, shootings, and even murders were their calling cards. They weren't just a gang, they were a force to be reckoned with. But like any empire built on violence, they knew they had to adapt. So, they rebranded themselves as the conservative Vice Lords, trying to shed their brutal image and gain some legitimacy. But here's the kicker: even when they tried to clean up their act, their violent roots never left them. In 1970, they managed to secure a $275,000 grant from the Rockefeller Foundation, but instead of using it for good, they funneled it straight into their criminal enterprises. It was the beginning of their shift from street violence to more sophisticated crimes. Today, the Vice Lords Nation has evolved into a criminal powerhouse, diving into everything from mortgage fraud to credit card scams and money laundering. Now, with an estimated 30,000 to 35,000 members spread across 74 cities and 28 states, the Vice Lords have expanded their reach beyond just Chicago. They've become a masterclass in criminal enterprise, blending old-school violence with new-school sophistication. And while they've shifted away from the streets, don't be fooled, their history of brutality is still very much alive. The Vice Lords are a reminder that behind every empire lies a dark past, and the deeper you dig, the more sinister it gets. Stick around, because this story is far from finished. In 1948, a group of rebellious bikers in California decided to carve out their own place in the world of crime, and thus, the Hells Angels were born. What started as a small, tight-knit gang has now become the most infamous outlaw motorcycle club in the United States. Known for their iconic Harley-Davidson bikes, the Hells Angels have evolved into more than just a gang. They've become a symbol of defiance and chaos. While they may look like just a group of guys living for the ride, the truth is far darker. These guys live and breathe violence. With chapters opening in San Francisco in 1954 and Oakland in 1957, the Hells Angels quickly spread across the U.S., infiltrating states one by one. And let's not forget the impact of those gritty biker films in the 60s and 70s, which helped fuel the myth and allure of this notorious gang. From stabbings to shootings to downright vicious organized crimes, the Hells Angels have written their bloody legacy on America's streets. But the violence is just the tip of the iceberg. Over the years, they've plunged deep into the illicit drug trade, expanding their criminal empire in ways that would make your head spin. Despite countless attempts to bring down the Hells Angels for racketeering, law enforcement's efforts have largely been in vain. The FBI continues to classify them as an outlaw motorcycle gang, a label they proudly embrace. The Hells Angels aren't just a gang, they're a brand, a force of chaos, and a testament to how far a group will go to ride the thin line between rebellion and criminal empire. But what's the real cost of their rebellion? And what's the true legacy of the Hells Angels in the world of outlaw culture? Let's dive deeper, because this isn't your average biker gang. Hidden in the depths of Chicago's dark streets, the Black Disciples have built an empire of crime that stretches far and wide. Founded in 1966 by David Barksdale, this gang started with a mission: to protect young African Americans from the violence and threats of other gangs. But what began as a small group of teens fighting back soon evolved into one of the most notorious criminal syndicates the city has ever seen. Fast forward to today, and the Black Disciples control over 300 sets, with each group boasting anywhere from 30 to 40 members. From arms trafficking to burglary, kidnapping, money laundering, illegal gambling, and racketeering, this gang has its fingers in every shady pie. But it doesn't stop there. The Black Disciples have cemented their place in the Chicago hip-hop scene, with names like Chief Keef, King Von, and Lil Durk proudly carrying their legacy into the spotlight. What started as a desperate need for protection transformed into an unstoppable force of chaos. The gang's violent history is painted in blood, with an appetite for destruction that shows no signs of slowing down. Their reach and influence only seem to grow, even as law enforcement attempts to take them down. The Black Disciples are not just a gang, they're a movement, a symbol of the harsh realities of life in the streets of Chicago. And as the body count rises, the city remains in the grip of one of its deadliest criminal organizations. So, what's next for the Black Disciples? And what does their future hold in the ongoing battle between law and lawlessness? Thanks for tuning in. Catch you in the next one.